This is one word, two syllables. Ridiculous, right?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Unfiltered Truth. I'm your host, Phil Robinson. With me, my brother from another mother, all the way on the East Coast by way, the fabulous, the incomparable, the almighty Phil motherfucking Jones.
Hey, Happy New Year, you guys.
Happy New Year indeed. We got a lot to talk about. We got the victory over the Broncos, finishing the season strong. The whole offseason chatter, last night's game, if in case anybody was watching. But before we get to all of that, I'd like to introduce our man of the hour, special guest from Las Vegas 8 News Now, Mr. Logan Reever. Welcome to the program, sir.
It's an honor. Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it. Like I was telling you before, we're in the car. It's not the fanciest of circumstances, but we're going hurry up offense here with this. So by any means.
Hey, there it is. I couldn't have asked for it any better than that. I'll take what you got. We've all been there. In the car, in the garage, we do a real grimy style around here. Ain't no high price studios, except for making rent work.
We fake it a little bit, yeah.
But this is awesome. So we have made it to the end of the road, the season finale. To the immediate business at hand, the Broncos, 8 straight games over the hated Denver Donkeys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's crazy to think about just how the level of dominance, and it's usually the fashion in which they beat him is always interesting. Whether it's just Josh Jacobs going off, or even in these circumstances, now you got guys in a bunch of different roles. It really feels like no matter who they line up against from a Denver perspective, no matter how hot of a streak they're on, or what it might be from the Vegas side of things, is that they just have their number. And I think a lot of people in the area, specifically here, really enjoy the fact that they can beat down on them no matter the circumstance. Even in the game for nothing, I think a lot of people took a lot of pleasure out of it. Hence why we're lighting up cigars in the locker room. They've done it a number of times, but we were wondering, are they going to do it again after this one? And part of it, we're like, oh, maybe not. But it was quite a scene, especially with all the Hall of Famers in there. You could tell it meant a lot to the guys in there.
So just between us guys here, nobody's watching this. So did they pass the media out any cigars?
We're absolutely not. I think that's going to take a whole different level. We did get an Antonio Pierce trying to get us to join in on Raiders, which there wasn't too many. What's that?
I said, yes, I saw that. I was hoping for a more spirited group, but I understand the professionalistic aspect of it. Lane.
It's also early. It's early. You get some of the people, they kind of they haven't had their coffee yet. Maybe it'd be a whole different vibe a little bit later on. But, that juice that Antonio Pierce brings is a 24/7 thing. But no, we haven't earned the privilege of the cigars yet. That's I think that might take a little bit more down the line. Plus, those cigars are expensive. That's the part that's left out of all of this, is that you're looking on some of the brands, you're like, oh, okay. If Charles Woodson's getting after this, then it's definitely not your Black and Milds of the world. It's something a little bit nicer than
that. The top of the line, not even the wood tip, huh?
No, not in this circumstance, no.
Hey, I feel it. I know going to the NFL media party was like that too. Where it's like, oh wow, they're just passing these out. Like, wow, that's a big old stick, bro. I can't smoke all of that.
Oh no, the other part of it too is that I don't know who to bill for my dry cleaning, because now I got 2 suits this season that have been absolutely drenched in smell, and they're gone beyond return maybe at this point. So we'll see who from the Raiders hey, is there any chance I get a $5 voucher for some dry cleaning, something like that? No, but it was quite a scene to partake in.
Don't worry, you got the scent of a casino on you now.
As long as it's not Circus, that's really all that matters. That's all that's fine with me.
Ooh,
That stale dank smell. Okay. You can smell that shit from the
that's the smell of age and death.
And you know what's messed up about that, Jones, is that's the representative's favorite place to go. One of. I don't ask me why, but she just loves those slots. It's crazy. But we can keep this thing moving, rolling. Denver, what is going on with Denver? I mean, that's really not the point of this show, but you know, I was talking on another show and I was saying with Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos, I very rarely in a season do you see what appears to be a complete 360. Usually it's a 180, you flip and you'll go and be in a totally different direction, hit a switch, and good or bad, swing back the other way. But Denver has gone all the way around. Sean Payton started out talking a gang of crap about the previous coach, how he couldn't coach, got to training camp and was like, uh-oh, we got problems here, much bigger problems than I thought. And they came out flat, looking terrible. The culmination of that being the 50-point loss to the Dolphins, which by the grace of somebody's checkbook, somebody called Mike McDaniel, excuse me, so that he didn't set the single game scoring record on them, which honestly and truthfully, I was like, if you're going to get that close, you might as well just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, they're all over the map. They're definitely all over the map for sure. They especially having Russ there kind of the whole game, and he was wearing his helmet the entire time. It was just odd from top to bottom. I mean, it was like saying to one of my buddies who's a big Russell Wilson fan, I was like, is this man about to enter the game or is he just doing it for the love of things? I think it's just a weird dynamic overall. And I think the main thing to take away from that whole situation is that Sean Payton never wanted this in the first place. Like if he was asking Russell Wilson to take out injury clauses and all of that, during the high point of the year, you can only imagine what it was like during the low points of the year. So I think he very much had it in his head from the start. I mean, I'm curious to see how that all shakes out because of just how we thought that was an immovable contract for Russell Wilson and you can't cut ties with him at any point. Well, Payton said, absolutely not. We're going to do exactly that. So leading to Jarrett Stidham playing in the same place he played at that exact time a year ago and that pretty much that exact same situation. I think Payton just wants to get some of his guys in there, which you can't blame him. I think, if Bill Belichick goes somewhere else, he's going to try to find a way to bring his guys with him as well. So I think that's really what a lot of coaching staffs do, but it's just interesting it took the fashion in which it took the year for the Broncos to go about it to do it. But I mean, I don't think you're going to see in a lot of ways, they're not just something that you can plug in one or two guys over in Denver and they're going to be all right. Like that's clear. They have needs on both sides of the ball, but I guess Sean Payton felt like the quarterback one is the most important. And that's probably because he was with Drew Brees forever. So he understands that. So he's probably comparing, contrasting a lot of things. So I think he had it in his head from the start though, especially after that Miami game, like you're saying, if Russ can't put up 70 back, I don't think we're going to be in a good place. So
71. But in the whole 3-6, that's where it got crazy because after that loss, then they turned around and went on a 5-game winning streak, and at one point we're in position to challenge for the division, which was like I don't even know how we got here, but somehow here we are.
Mm-hmm. And Russ wasn't bad with his stats either. That's the part people are leaving out too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not. He was lightweight cooking. They had something going on, and then this whole thing came out. And when it came out, that wasn't even when it really came out. Like you said, it came out during the high point when he was out there playing well, when they were winning football games, and I was like, well, how did we? Why would you even do that? Like you're kneecapping yourself. Like who does that?
A guy that's been through it before in some way, shape, or form. I feel like I think a lot of these head coaches who have had success other places. I think that they truly believe that there's one way to go about things, and when you've seen that level of success, or you've come across a way that a certain guy does things, and then the guy that you have doesn't do it that way, because as we know, we've seen a lot of different things from Russ, mainly last season in terms of his relationship with teammates and stuff. And even going back to this game, it's not that I think guys dislike Russ on the Broncos, but the whole entire time he was really just standing by himself on the sideline, and I'd have to imagine that was the case in the game sometimes that he was in too. So, it's a bit of a finicky type of relationship I think a lot of them have with it, but I don't know if it warranted exactly the way that they went about it at the same time too. So it's amazing what happens when you look at the Raiders, like what happens when you have buy-in, and that's from every single position, because I can't tell you one guy that didn't buy into what Antonio Pierce was doing. So, it's not apples to apples by any means, but it goes to show that NFL locker rooms are, it sometimes can be very fragile, and it takes one guy to maybe disrupt a lot of the things going on. And sometimes that guy could be the head coach too.
Which is an excellent segue to where we are now. And you have been there like we talked about earlier, longer than just this season. You've been there since last season. You've been a front row center throughout the entire Josh McDaniels experience and Dave Ziegler experience, good, bad, or indifferent. I was taught when you look at how fast the culture changed, and I got an article coming out, and at first I thought it was a week, because you think, okay, he's in, you play the game, whole week has passed, culture change, ooh, big. The reality was that the culture change was much faster than that. He probably had that culture change in hours.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, and I've been trying to think about how to describe it as well, because now that we've had a chance to sort of reflect on the entire season, going back to that time, it's funny because it feels like it was just last week, but in a lot of ways, it feels like it was years ago. It feels like Antonio Pierce has had this team forever. So it's been tough to kind of think about how, the concept of time and how long it's really been. In the way that I've kind of been chalking it up more recently, now that the season is over, at least in the last 24, 48 hours, is that I think the culture was already there. Guys were just terrified to sort of let it show full-fledged, right? Because I think even in those Josh McDaniels locker rooms, there wasn't really that sense of jubilance when they would win games. It would just be kind of like a quick talk, and guys would move on. And there was really a sense of treasuring the whole entire process when Antonio Pierce came along, because I don't know if there's anybody that's capable of, within one day or even sometimes a week, creating a culture change. I feel like that's who those guys have been. They just finally got the chance to show it full-fledged. And that's what's more powerful than anything else, because like I was saying in some of our reports over the weekend, is that you have guys who sometimes go through 1, 2 jobs, maybe get a second, third chance in the league, not even at head coach, just at coordinator positions, who it takes them that amount of time to sort of gain the respect of guys and allow them to be themselves. Because let's be honest, coaching football, you've guys from so many different backgrounds and so many different ways to relate to them. Antonio Pierce finds a way to do it with every single guy, because that locker room, there are as different of cats all over the place as you can imagine. But during the course of these 9 weeks, it didn't feel that way at all. And I think that there was definitely a little bit more clicks in the separation of church and state when it was those first 8 weeks under McDaniels. You could kind of tell. And once he took over, there was less of, oh, well, here's this group in the locker room and here's this group in the locker room. It felt very much more cohesive, and that you had guys that there's like 3 or 4 times that you're like, oh, that guy's like boys with that guy, which, you just didn't really think about, and that they would bring on, and even the guys that they would bring in later. I mean, Jack Jones was like, was absolute like best friends with everybody within 2 weeks. And I was like, you come to find out that guys like Meek had been, watching him since high school and stuff like that. But in a lot of ways, I think people shared their stories and were able to bond in a much faster way than they did in the first 8 weeks of the year, and especially over the course of last season as well. And a lot of that is a testament of Antonio Pierce, where it's almost like, one of those, when you're in elementary school or classes growing up early on in life, and they make you turn to somebody you don't know and go, hey, introduce yourself and talk to them about them. And it felt like Antonio Pierce had that times, a million, where every single guy in the group very much could relate to each other. And that's why they don't want to break it up right now. Like, they've seen what the good in that can be and what it can do to a team and how it relates on the field. And they don't want to bring somebody else in, probably no matter who it is. And I can truly say that for every single guy on the roster, which is not a thing in NFL locker rooms. There's always a handful of guys that are like, yeah, this guy's great, but I wouldn't be devastated if somebody else came on. This group would be devastated if somebody else came on.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And from what we've been told, obviously we're not in Mark's inner circle, and he doesn't divulge such things to us. We should. We'd help him make much more better decisions, much better, not much more better. But there is it's in a way, from the outside looking in, it has a perfect storm kind of feel to it. And I was able to see it early, and we've seen turnover many times as Raider fans over the course of the last 20 plus, but yet this one felt differently. And it felt differently from the jump, and it felt differently with the way that Pierce came in and asserted himself while not being a dick about it, which was great. And the way that he came in, he put faith in the rookie that the previous coach had not a whole lot of faith in, which is why he was on the bench. We could go into some of the coaching decisions with Aiden O'Connell, but I'm sure you can't say all of the fun stuff we'd like to talk about. But the things that he did, the belief that he instilled in everybody throughout the process, whether it be the players, the coaching staff, and this was something that he brought up in his last press conference, was it truly that genuine that everybody just completely from top to bottom just bought in almost instantaneously and started pulling on the same rope, and they became able to achieve a greater objective, maybe not the ultimate objective, but to get to something that resembled a playoff team.
Yeah. I mean, I truly think it was. I look back at, sometimes it's just the fact that you have to have a lot of guys who they already have really good leaders in the room, I think is another part of it. Like you have such established guys in Josh Jacobs, who was already, NFL's leading rusher. You have a Devontae Adams, who's one of the best to do it at the receiver position. You have Max Crosby, who's in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. I think that that's maybe the part in all of this that's a little bit lost is that when you have as many strong leaders and voices like this group had, they're then able to relate to the guys who haven't been through the experience as much. Like, hey, we are all in on this guy. And I think if you had maybe like weaker personalities or maybe just not as strong of guys in that scenario, it might not have worked. But the truth is, and it really resonated with me, is Antonio Pierce talking in the locker room after the fact of being like, we want to be respected, not liked. And I think that that's going back to what you're saying is like not being a dick about it. In a lot of ways, that's really what respect is. It's like, hey, you might not like the way that sometimes we go about things, but it's a respect thing. And I think more than anything else, the guys want to keep him in the locker room because he has their respect. And, it obviously helps that you have Max Crosby, who's, one of the main voices in that room, has a really deep love and respect for him. And because when he's linebackers coach, like you've seen some of the best seasons already from, a Robert Spillane who was, projected to get here and maybe not do as much as he did and then completely change the face of the defense, is that when you have those results tangibly and this defense turns into a top 10 one, of course they're going to put a little bit more faith in it. But the message was so uniquely different from the one they had been receiving for the first months of the season that I think everybody was just so refreshed to see that they were ready to absolutely give all the confidence and belief like you're talking about to them. So I think that a large part of it was guys like Devontae backing him and Josh and Max, because without that, without your strongest voices in the room truly believing, it's hard to get the other 50 guys in that case to do the exact same.
No, that's some powerful stuff. So,
Yeah.
have you had an opportunity to talk to Mark at all about anything? Now, I know that Tayshaun had got a chance to interview him at the owners meeting in Irving, Texas.
Right.
But
Right.
as this has gone on, as process has played out, have you had a chance to talk to Mark and see how he felt about some of this? Obviously, outside of the
Mm-hmm.
head coaching search, but in the midst of this turnaround, because as this whole process went on, nobody knew what his criteria was.
Mm-hmm.
We know what he said to Tayshaun in the interview, which was encouraging amount of nothingness at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
While he said what he was been pleased with and acknowledged the situation, he didn't really lean one way or the other, or really give you anything concrete in terms of what it was that he was looking for. I mean, Antonio Pierce went 3-1 through AFC divisional opponents and had the opportunity to make a clean sweep because they were up 14-0 on the Chiefs, with the opportunity to go even further. But in trying to correct a previous mistake, he let his foot off the gas on the defending champs, and they never looked back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of Mark's sort of, tenor and the way that he's been speaking really since Antonio took over is a lot of leaving the door open for a possibility still of change. And you can understand that because the coaching carousel, especially at this time of year, is so unique. And then you obviously have the Harbaugh, part on top of all of it with every team in the league, not just the Raiders part of it. And I think timing is really important in all of this too, is that, how quickly do you want to bring in a guy to sort of take over things? Is it where you want to wait out a certain candidate to see at the end of their playoff run, or do you want it to be an immediate thing? Because, let's be honest, Antonio Pierce is there for the taking, obviously wants the job, has voiced it. Everyone else is, there's nobody that hasn't voiced that they want the guy to be in the position. And I won't say half in, half out, but something along those lines of how open the search is leading me down a road to believe that it is still very much that they are pursuing other options on top of it. And I understand a lot of that is due diligence, but the fact that Antonio Pierce has been so willing at this point and is there for the taking, right? I mean, you're getting reports about the Giants being interested in him for a defensive coordinator spot, and it's really tough to imagine him not as a head coach, especially after the 9 weeks that this team in the 9 games that this team has come across. But in my opinion, at this point, especially with the offseason, you will see a lot of things change on a week-to-week basis. But my opinion at this point is that it is very much an open conversation and an open position. Now that can obviously change over the course. It's a daily thing, not even a weekly thing, but a daily thing. But I very much feel like Mark Davis is open to all options at this point, even with the feel-good nature and the chance and everything. I know it's got to be hard on him to to sort of have that open possibility when the fan base is so all in on AP, especially with that kind of that bone chilling and goosebump inducing send off that they gave Antonio Pierce when he was walked off the field.
No, not just that, but I'm trying to think of, in all the time that I've been covering sports and all the time that I've been watching, where I've seen an individual you have unanimous support from in every sense of the word, whether it be the fans, whether it be the players, whether it be the media, especially for this particular franchise. I don't recall a time where I've ever seen it. Maybe it happened with Madden and Flores back in the day. That was a little bit before my time for me debating myself, but it's just one of those things where, like you said, I can see the importance of doing due diligence to make sure you get it right, but at the same time, I don't see how it's going to be wrong.
Yeah, and especially, I think that I asked a lot of the guys in the locker room after. I was like, truly, and they've been through a lot more experiences in different teams, organizations, different aspects of football than, guys like ourselves or anybody covering the team. And I was like, have you even seen anything close to that? And they're like, no, not even close. And I think that speaks volumes. And another part of it too is that when interim coaches usually take over NFL teams, they're bad. They're usually just playing out the string and nothing comes of it. And I think that you've now had 2 circumstances with this team and a lot of the same guys from that team a couple of years ago that made the playoffs, the fact that they are able to rally around and, what ended up being a playoff push that year and then getting close this year as well. Like that's not a coincidence. The fact that almost every team in history usually isn't even above 500 when they have a guy that comes in the interim tag. And then these guys turned it into a positive. I think that's really telling of the group. And I think it's really telling of Antonio Pierce because there's so many, think about the amount of fans that of teams right now that are maybe in bad places where they go, well, the number one thing is I don't want a first-time head coach. I want something more proven. In this case, you got Antonio Pierce when things were 3-5 and a dumpster fire all around in probably the worst situation you can throw in a guy. for being a first timer in the NFL as a head coach. And he made the most of it and turned it into something where now he has a resume from it and is a strong candidate in the eyes of not just the team that he's with at the moment, but probably somewhere down the line. Like, let's be honest, he's going to be a head coach somewhere eventually, just where he tracks and everything that goes along with it. The fact that he turned this into what he did is still mind-numbing to me, because we sat through a lot of those games, not just this year, but last year, when teams would come back from 3 possessions down consistently. And we're like, how in the world can you possibly fix this? And not that everything was fixed, because they didn't play perfectly under Antonio Pierce, but so many core things that teams search years for under a guy were flipped overnight, basically. And I think that alone is a reason to sort of obviously cheer the man off the field, but be like, we don't want to let this dude go. We know what life looks like on the other side. We've experienced it for so long. And I think Max is the poster child for that, because he's the one that's voiced, man, if we just had this guy all year, what could we have done? And I think the fan base feels that way. And I know the locker room does too, with everything that they've been preaching.
No doubt. And I would love to see what he could do with a full off season, a draft, free agency, a training camp, being able to bring in his own guys, because we've started to see some people leak information, however true that may or may not be, remains to be seen. But it just it just feels right, and that's strange to say, but that's as accurately as I can put it. And we could spin around in circles and talk about how, because it seems obvious that we probably are all in agreement that AP should keep this job. But we have the Jim Harbaugh big fish effect. Finally got over the hump, off the schneid, won the big one, all of that stuff for the first time in ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think talking with people, I think that there's definitely mutual interest between the two sides. I sometimes wonder about fit. I think I wonder about fit based on the way that I have seen the locker room over the last 9 weeks, right? I think that it would have been a different conversation had there not been any sort of, say Josh McDaniels was here the entire year and then he plays out the string and then gets fired, yesterday or whatever. I think that's a different conversation than Antonio Pierce here and then the Jim Harbaugh element of things. I wonder about fit from the standpoint of not completely, but in a way he does have, where he's running the entire show. That's what Josh McDaniels wanted to do. And that was the thing that didn't work here. And it didn't work, and it flamed out in a massive way. And I understand Jim Harbaugh could do things in a number of ways different than what just happened. He obviously did in San Francisco and took them to a Super Bowl, like in what felt like a change overnight. But I think from a buy-in standpoint, it's going to be not really hard, I shouldn't say, but I think it's going to be a little bit difficult given what they have just experienced and that level of emotional investment, because I think that that's a big thing that might be lost in all of this too, is that a lot of those guys, especially from a leadership standpoint, gave a lot of their emotions towards Antonio Pierce. And I think to see that maybe not result in the head coaching hire that they wanted would be a little bit more draining in a sense too. So I think it would be tough from anybody walking in this position. But if there would be a guy to do it, it obviously would be Harbaugh, because he's also just a great game planner and schemer and an offensive mind that obviously this league tracks towards. Everybody in the league is looking for the next big offensive thing, right? Like defense is sometimes forgotten about. The fact that Patrick Graham has had the year that he did, and is in the same conversation when it comes to coaching jobs around the league. But everyone wants the shiny new toy from an offensive standpoint. And Harbaugh brings that, and it's a whole different conversation because he's going to be in charge of everything once again. So I wonder from the standpoint of it's so fresh and it's so new that Josh McDaniels is just trying to do that exact thing. And then you hand over the similar keys to another guy that's trying to do the same thing. I wonder how that would go over in the locker room, because it has been, as we were just talking about, it has been a little bit, fluctuating and all over the place, what they've experienced now over the course, I would say not even the last 2 years, the last 3 years, even going back to Bisaccia as well. It's, eventually that's going to take its toll on guys. And so I wonder from that standpoint if it is a fit. But football-wise, X's and O's wise, of course. But you're going to have to give him everything because, if he's leaving the college game and going to a place, it has to be the right situation. And a lot of that boils back down to dollars and the amount of control that you can have over a team. So it would be his show in every way, shape, and form, as opposed to Antonio Pierce collaborating with someone, which I think would be a really interesting prospect as well to see that through.
All great points. And when I think about Harbaugh and the situation up in Michigan, I think, how could you possibly want to leave? You're the first team in history, in school history, to go 15-0. You're winning the national championship for the first time in 26 years. I mean, the man is going to have a statue outside of the big house by this time next year.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of ways, I think it really speaks to his, and there's certain guys like this who have been, maybe just are always on to the next thing. And that's just kind of the way that they go about life. And it's the way that they go about football. And maybe Harbaugh is that guy in that case. I mean, there's been a bunch of guys who get kind of stir crazy when they're in one place for so long, or one sort of, they come across one walk of life and then they want to go on to something else. Like, there's guys like that. And that would have to be the excuse, because I don't understand why you would leave college. There's a reason Nick Saban hasn't left Alabama since the Miami days. He was like, oh, this is what it's like to coach in the NFL. And this is the money that I make in college, to be essentially seen as like a religious figure in the faces of many of the people in the area you're with. Like, I don't understand why you would ever want to leave that, because that's the most comfortable job of all time, unless you're getting to a point where, some of these guys, for health reasons, they don't want to travel for recruiting or something like that. But, if not for that, I don't understand why you would leave any of these positions, because they are so comfortable. And, you're not ever really going to get booted from there unless something really, really bad happens, or, a full-on scandal that's, well, they technically did already have a scandal this year, but a scandal that's worse than the one that they came across. But yeah, I don't understand it, but I think that it really boils down to personality types, because the fact that all of this reporting and rumoring is happening, it tells me a little bit that he might just be on to the next thing. And he had success in the NFL, so maybe the fact that he's had that proving ground already speaks volumes to that too.
What do you think, Jones?
Just literally just one national title, and like you said, Nick Saban being looked as Alabama's year. That's the same thing that's going on now in Michigan. Had a drought for how many years? They about to build a damn statue for this man. They're about to ground that this man walk on. Listen to that he said last night about having the team start in Ann Arbor when it warms up instead of starting in February. Could he be coming back? That's what it sounded like. I mean, everybody says this, and this, but the literally won national title, then he's just going to walk away from everything.
No way. I don't believe it. And even if it were a monetary thing, at this point, having just brought the national championship back to Ann Arbor, the alumni got to be willing to reach deep down in the pockets to pay that man whatever it is that he wants to have in order for him to stay and win another one. Because with the new super conferences, the new Big 10 and Big 12, SEC, they're gonna need all they can get. And right now, Michigan's stock will never be higher.
Yeah, the money's not going down anytime soon. The money's only going up, and that's why these guys don't. Is even just a Power 5 conference. Like, even if you're the Rutgers of the world, or the Vanderbilts of, even just from a football perspective, like, you're with these TV deals that these conferences are receiving, and even with the realignment, like, you are still making a ridiculous amount of money in bank, and it's top heavy with the coaches getting all of that. And I mean, now you have NIL deals, so guys can get a little bit, but the coaches are still making the certain amount, if not more. It's not like that's cutting into the players getting a little bit of dough is not cutting into the coaches by any means. So if anything, those jobs are just becoming more desirable and even better.
And let's be honest, the money that the players getting isn't any more than they weren't already getting. They're just able to declare it
Right.
and say that they're getting it instead of those mysterious envelopes that are like, "Why? What's in there? That's awful thick." But
That Range Rover in your driveway wasn't there last night. I can't help but notice. What's going on there?
said, "Mom got a raise, huh? Moved into a new house on the other side of town."
Yeah.
Oh man. So what's the situation with Champ Kelly? So I've seen a lot of names be announced as coming in to interview for the job. For the most part, with the exception of the gentleman from the Bengals and the gentleman from the Bills and the Niners, they are all appear to be lateral moves from guys who've already been general managers or directors of pro personnel. And I know that was one of the things that Mark had said that he was interested in pursuing was a director of player personnel so that he could kind of have a guy that was always going to be there, even if the general manager and the head coach didn't work out.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that there's a lot of interest in Champ as my car freaks out. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in Champ, and there already has been because in a lot of ways that they have built, especially with this rookie draft class, I think there's a lot of promise there too, and I think that there's a track record, and there's something to be said for, like we were kind of talking about before, in terms of being first-time head coaches. GM wise, those guys kind of move around to the point where you wonder. There's talk about Nick Caserio down in Houston. He just turned a team overnight. With CJ Stroud and everything. He just turned them overnight, and now there's maybe some mutual interest between him and returning back to New England where he was before. So I think that there's a lot of factors that go along with it. But I will say this is that in NFL circles, Champ Kelly is very much viewed as one of those rising stars, and you can kind of tell why, with just the way that he conducted himself, especially. He was so front and center also while that Antonio Pierce change was happening as well. And I think that there was a lot of people that didn't want to be front and center while all of this was going on. Or I would say in different scenarios, in different teams that might not want to be front and center when a change like that happens. And not just Antonio, but Champ was the face of it all. And I think going forward, if you were to hand the keys to him, I think you'd be in a really good spot. I think he has a lot of faith within the organization, but I think the league also views it in a similar way as well. So I'll be interested to see, because it kind of goes back to the Harbaugh conversation, where do you want to bring in kind of one of these big wig head coaches that also want to have a say in personnel, or do you want to have truly a guy who sometimes teams look at this as well, where they want a guy who has already had a head coach, or that same coach worked with the GM as well, as opposed to just throwing them in, hey, here's a new GM, here's new head coach, try to find a way to make it work. NFL teams don't like doing that. They like having a little bit of history. And I think that's why you're seeing maybe some of the conversation. The head coaching will very much match up with who they get as a GM, because they want a little bit of a track record when it comes to that stuff too. So I think that that's extra incentive to keep on a guy like Champ. But like we were talking about, very similar to the Antonio stuff, is that the due diligence is there. This is the time of year to do it. But I think the good news is that a lot of the guys that they've, like you were just mentioning, the three there, have had track histories and are on really good teams at the moment, and have worked under guys who they've learned a lot from as well. But Champ is in a similar boat to that too.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of Champ, while we're on, so what's he like? So is he the same guy on that off camera that he is on camera? It seems as though it's kind of one of those opposites attract kind of jump offs between him and AP in terms of style, but it works together. So much so, like I mentioned earlier, where kind of almost like the perfect storm scenario where it's all clicking together at the right time in unison.
I actually think that they have, and I know what you mean. I actually think that they have a lot more in common when it comes to their mindset than people might think. I think that the way that they not just think about football decisions, but I think the way that they think about life and kind of motivation is actually very similar. I think they have very similar demeanors from that front. I think the way that both of them go about it is very different in their delivery and their presences. Champ is as friendly as they get. I think I've seen him spend a lot of time especially down in the pregame, just, visiting with fans, talking. And he's very much, I think you have a lot of guys that, like I was just mentioning before, want to be the face, right? They don't want to shy away from it. They want to embrace it. And Champ is very much that same way as well in the interactions that, especially that I've had with him. I remember something that really stuck out in my mind was, after the shootings here at UNLV, how he was rocking the shoes that had their logos on them and the hearts as well. And you can tell that community is a very big thing to him. And I think sometimes when you get in the NFL, sometimes you've been doing so much moving around or popping from different spots that you kind of forget that this is in a city and community that comes along with it. And he very much embraces that. And I think that that's a really important just tell of his character. And every interaction that I've had with him has been really positive, and he's been a super friendly guy. But you can see why him and AP get along is they might not go about it the same way in terms of when they're talking at the mic. But I think that in terms of what's driving them, it's actually more similar than you would think.
Good to know. Good to know. I think it. I figured that it would in terms of the way that in terms watching them sit side by side and just kind of looking at them, you can tell from body language and seeing the limited bits of stuff that we get to see through the eyes of whatever it is that you and your counterparts show us in the locker room, and how they just interact with the players, and you can see it, and the genuineness is there, and I bet that he is a friendly guy. I've heard stories about him as well. I was just curious to see your take on it. um and the whole respect factor, I think one of the things that I've been most pleased with, which is incredible, is how many different organizations are now attempting to poach from the Raider staff.
Mm-hmm.
Normally they wouldn't want anything to do with the coaching staffs that we've had in the past, or particular aspects of the coaching staff, but you've seen now Patrick Graham be selected for a head coach position, which rightfully so when you look at what he's done in terms of taking this team from starting off the season almost at the bottom of the barrel and then finishing all the way at the top, despite what many thought was an untalented defense and not a lot of resources committed to it. Then you look at Brasillo going back to work with potentially a guy that he's already got history with, and all of the offers that have come in, or interview requests that have come in from other places, and I'm sure there'll be more. Um, it just really stands to reason just how much this has come together, and how on the precipice that it really truly could be if given the nudge and the right push to grow in a positive direction.
Yeah, and Patrick Graham is a guy that I think is, in terms of when you look back at the most impressive parts of the season and the team, is that of course a lot of it's going to go to players, but I think Patrick Graham is the one that's not talked about nearly enough. Just in terms of when I've talked to guys, I think that the difference in year one to year two, we talk about it a lot with quarterbacks, right? Like the game slowing down, seeing the field. It very much felt like that happened for Patrick Graham. And weirdly enough, the reason for success was a lot of maybe relaxing. And I think that he's talked about that a lot saw in a presser, what was it, last week, where he's talking about having the most fun he's had, coaching in his football life. And he's been around a lot of good teams. He's been around Super Bowl winning teams and a lot of really talented players, yet this is the one that really stuck out to him. And I understand that when you have the keys handed to you, of course, you're going to feel a different way about it. But I think that his maturation from year one to year two is probably the most encouraging thing about why teams want to view him as such, because when you can have that level of growth and potential and sort of excitement for a team to take you on, then there's nothing like it. Because if there's anything that sells in the NFL more than anything else, it is potential. And I think Patrick Graham's, a lot of people questioned it in year one and wondered where this was going, but he really turned some heads in year two. In the way guys talk about him, I think is an important part. Guys talk a lot about AP, and he definitely had an impact on the defense, don't get me wrong, but Patrick Graham played a very significant role in just the development of guys too, talking a lot with guys like Jacorian Bennett and how important he was in all of it. Malcolm Kuntz has emphasized how his best year has come from a lot of what Patrick Graham has really given him in terms of that. So when you have key young players getting better as well, teams will look to that times a million because they want to be around surrounded with that, and they want that to trickle over to the entire team. And I think Patrick Graham can get to that point. It still remains to be seen how that would go from an offensive standpoint, but he's a leader of men to me. That's a term Max uses a lot, and I think it applies to him too.
Okay, so here, let's hit the difficult questions because one of the things that you mentioned was the development of the younger players, the rookies and whatnot. And that's one of the things that really struck me about the difference from Josh McDaniels to Antonio Pierce. Now, with the exception of Mick Lombardi and Josh McDaniels, how is it that the rest of his coaching staff was able to develop the younger players on this team when they were not?
I think it was a free reign thing. I think that Josh wanted to have his hands in a lot of different things, and I think Bo Hardegree is a great example, right? Never called plays before in the NFL game, and they go put up 30 in the first week, and I think that's when you give, and that's why it's in a lot of ways this can kind of sound like a TED talk because we're talking about instilling confidence and all these different buzzwords, right? But there's actually something behind it because when guys are allowed to have freedom, sometimes it allows them to sort of break out of any sort of change that the group has had before. Like, I think the rookies are a great example of that, specifically with Michael Mayer and Trey Tucker. Like, even in this last game, people were like, okay, well, Trey Tucker takes the top off the defense. He's great at the deep ball. He was running a lot more short and intermediate routes and showed the versatility that he has potential to help them in a lot of different ways and not just one. And that was something that we really, as much, as many compliments as McDaniels received before coming over here, they really were one-dimensional in a lot of ways. And I know Josh Jacobs had his best career year last year with them, but they would get to a certain point in the game and there was really no adjustment. And having guys like Bo Hardegree be able to find those adjustments sometimes in those close games, and even boiling down to Aiden O'Connell not completing a pass for after the first quarter, the Kansas City game, and still finding a way to win that game. Like, guys will look to being like, wow, I can't believe they won without a completion after that point. But we should look at it as like, wow, I can't believe they won a game without a completion after that point. Like, that's a positive in my eyes, the fact that a guy can go out there and do that. And a lot of it is because they were like, hey, we trust you. Go out there and make this your own. And there's obviously a lot of development that still has to happen from that group. But I think that's why you're seeing a lot more interest in these guys, because nobody's going through 3 or 4 layers or all of these different checkpoints to be like, am I allowed to do this? What do you think about this? They're just saying, hey, one-stop shop. We go with the play call, make it your own. And it led to more success over the course of the year. So when you have guys allowing to get free reign like that, I think the possibilities are endless. It's not always a perfect case in every single circumstance. We've seen cases where it goes wrong. But with this group, they were better when the pressure was off.
No doubt. What do you think about that, Jones?
Nah, I had a couple alerts on my phone.
Oh, you're killing me, dog. Come on, man.
Oh my gosh, man.
Dog thing.
He is a trip tonight.
Hey, you might as well go on and get him and give him a couple minutes of airtime. Maybe he'll shut the hell up after that.
No. Because you know what I tried for, and this man just looked, what the hell are you doing? Nah, but yeah. Look, overall, my mindset is with this whole thing and looking at this whole team going forward. The one thing they didn't have, I mean, they tried to do it last year. You try to have, continuity with having your coach there for 2 years and not one and done. But we did that with the wrong person. Overall, I feel this year you need to just go with you need to just go forward with AD. Just go forward with him. Just say, hey, we're gonna give you 3 years. Boom. We're gonna give you Champ Kelly. Make him your GM. Just get it done. Boom. If you need your own damn off, that's it. It just go with what's the hot hand. That's how I feel right now. That's where I'm at right now. And y'all can kiss my ass in the comments, all right? All of y'all can kiss my ass.
Sorry, this is an ongoing thing for us. You just happen to get caught up in the middle of this, Logan. So like I said, just roll with it. Just let 5G and Jesus take the wheel, and we'll make it through this.
Not a bad idea.
Oh man, yeah, it gets pretty brutal in here in the comments section, but I love it.
Yeah, they're cold.
I love it. Oh
Raiders
man,
Twitter. I've been on Raiders Twitter long enough to know the replies. Sometimes you got to mute them. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not great. Sometimes it's not great for your mental health if you're looking at everything.
No, it sure can't.
No.
I know over the course of the years with the whole quarterback conversation, I have had to take many steps back away from that because the blind devotion to particular individuals was staggering, to say the least.
I will say, in terms of NFL fan bases, though, being able to cover a couple before my time here, the fact that it matters here is cool as hell to me, because there's a lot of places where the level of passion and the conversations and all that stuff is not nearly what it is here. And, the fact that it's a national brand like that, the fact that people do comment the things that they do sometimes, a little bit off the wall, but the fact that the passion is behind it, that's not a thing anywhere. Like, you look at different fan bases, it's like, oh, we went 1-15 or whatever, 1-16 now, like, whatever, fine, the day goes on. Like, it gets to people here, and that just means that it means more. So from that standpoint, it's pretty rewarding to do the work.
No, for sure. So what teams have you covered since before the Raiders?
So my last job was covering Philly, covering the Eagles for a couple of years there, and then over in Carolina, actually covering a little bit of the Panthers for my time down there as well. So yeah, this has by far been the well, Philly fans are different too. I shouldn't say that. They have their own sort of beautiful madness to them. So there's a similar sort of vibe at times here as well. So Carolina is not. It's a different level there too. So
now, so were you there for the Tepper years or before?
Right when Tepper took over, right when they were making the switch of ownership.
So yeah, did he his drink on somebody else while you were there?
No, back then it was rainbows and lollipops and everything was grand, and now we're years later and nobody's closing the door to the suite, and we're throwing things all over the place. So I'm like, hey, I still got buddies that cover that team there, and I just sometimes message them like, bro, what is going on? What is going on? So yeah, it's far removed from the days from the good vibes that started that introductory press conference. A little different now.
Yeah, I imagine we are in a different stratosphere when the owner's throwing drinks on fans and hiding behind security. Like, I thought that there was a man code somewhere in there, but it appears that money supersedes everything.
When you have a certain amount, that code, I guess, does not apply. That's I guess, the rumor.
Must be nice. Must be nice. Logan, thank you for your time. You have been most generous, and I know that car seat is probably cramping your ass right now. And I know what that's like. I've done it many times. So I'm going to let you off the hook and end this one a little easier. Thank you again for your time. Very much appreciated.
Bro, the cramps are worth it. Always worth it.
Hey,
anytime.
There it is.
You guys have me on, okay? And I send my best to the dog. Sorry that I upset him by being on the show.
You know what?
I got my boy covered right here. Milk bones.
He's gonna need more than milk bones, bro.
I got a whole bag. Don't even worry about it. We got.
He's gonna need more than milk bones.
He ain't that big.
Shit, but he eat mean.
Eat mean. All right. Let's get out.
Appreciate you guys.
No,
Thanks so much.
No problem. You have a good one. Take care and get home safely.
Will do. Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
All right. Oh, Logan Reever. Well, that was interesting, informative, and all over the place. But I mean, once again, you look at we kick this around, we spin this in many different directions and look at it from all types of angles, only to come up with the same thing. AP needs
Okay, damn it, you win.
Cool Cat been on your hey boy.
You win. You win.
Your ass today.
Damn it, Kev, you win.
Fair treatment. Damn, I don't even know what to say to that. Oh man. Look, I let him off the hook, and now all of a sudden here come the comments. All these motherfuckers been waiting on your ass.
You put nothing, sons of bitches.
He sent some off his court photo booth after the picture. Oh man. Oh, it's getting ruthless in here. It's getting straight ruthless. Oh, you know who I really would like to hire for the job that I think would be great, Phil? I think we should hire Mike Vrabel. Animal cruelty, Rico. Oh man.
Oh, shut the fuck up. You know what? I'm going. Fuck off.
That seriously. Don't take that seriously. Don't even bother. That sure wasn't worth it. There's only one answer here. And uniquely, it's not even Harbaugh that I would take. There's just it's so much Mark has got a roadmap. I don't know any other way to say this. I'm gonna just come right out and say this. One, KB, you could try if you want to. I will run your ass the fuck over. And anybody else who gets in my way will get ran the fuck over. So step up if you want.
Nah, KB, keep fucking around. Keep fucking around. You're going to end up with that nasty, dry-ass barbecue right next to your ass in the coming weeks. Keep on. That dry-ass pulled pork that you had that you mistaken that shit for beef will be with you.
I don't see.
You thought Josh McDaniels got it bad getting fired on Halloween. Imagine getting that damn dry ass barbecue pulled pork shoved down your throat.
Call him pulled pork Kenny. You know what I'm saying? We got to check him. Hey, so on the real, somebody needs to hack his Twitter account and change it to pulled pork Kenny from now on. He ain't gonna be called nothing else. Dry ass pulled pork Kenny.
That shit looked like a fucking hate crime. I said, who did this to you? Who did you?
He said back and buffering like it was bad and bougie. You ain't shit. You ain't shit. You ain't ever gonna be shit. You can't even aspire to be shit. You can't dream about being shit because you ain't shit. Whoa! Barbecue and a foot massage. Wait a minute.
Oh, we don't do that shit here. We don't. We do that shit here. Okay.
On everyone, this your Cat Williams villain era. Oh, that's cool. Check this out. I got a little Cat Williams vibe too. Watch this. And sit your ass down and shut the fuck up. But anyway, all fun and games aside, thank you for tuning in to the Unfiltered Truth. Had this little bit of ha-has on the way out. We appreciate all of you. Thank you for tuning in. God bless. We out.
This is one word, two syllables. Ridiculous, right?